Decided not to maybe preach, but to go into a secular work because I'd still live in Visalia, California, because I love the community and I love the people. And that says something about his heart. When we were thinking about speakers and the different topics that we would give them, one of the ones that we came up with was with family and tending the fires of a family. And earlier in the lectureship, Cliff made a statement. He goes, well, I'm not sure exactly why you chose me. And I can tell you why we chose him. He's got 6 children. And so 6 children says that, listen, he's living in a world that's different from mine. I raised 3 daughters, and that was a number of years ago. And some of you have raised your children, but raising children today, I think, is different than it was 5 or maybe even 10 years ago or back when I was raising children. And so we thought that, he might have a really unique perspective on raising children, and because he's a Christian man, and because he follows the Word of God, he's got the perfect plan sitting in his lap called the Bible. And so we thought this will be a guy that's going to be able to really share with us. Part of the thing that helps him be probably a good dad is he knows jiu-jitsu. So he can probably, well, I was going to say he could probably whip all of his children, except for I think one now can finally whip him. But anyway, you're going to love hearing from Cliff as he shares with us tending the fires of the family.
Energetic, you talk so fast. I was just nervous, okay? Now that we're... Start that joke over. No, anyway, I had a challenge last night. So my PowerPoint, I'm a Mac guy, and I like using everything in the Mac platform just because I'm old now, so I just do all the same things the way I've always done them. And I use Keynote. Well, your system doesn't like Keynote. So last night I downloaded Microsoft PowerPoint. You get like a free trial because I don't plan on paying for it. And I redid a whole PowerPoint presentation. But I'm new to PowerPoint, so I had to use the templates. So if it looks really boring and not as pretty as Brett's slides, I tried my best, okay? But tending to the fires of family. Let's talk about my family real quick here for a second. This picture's a few years old. That's me, obviously, right there, the bald guy. It's my wife, Zinni. That's my oldest son, Owen, Claire, Xander, Roman, Gwen, Fiona, and don't ask me their birth dates or anything like that, but that's the family right there, and we have a good time. I love my family. They're my favorite people. They're kind of the favorite thing I've ever done, that kind of stuff, so I'm excited to get to see them tomorrow, and I've been FaceTiming them every time I get in the car when I leave here, which is also really hard to find the hotel when you do that. And also, we're staying at a La Quinta, not a Quality Inn, which I didn't realize that till after Siri took me the wrong way. But my family's awesome. My wife does everything at the church. I mean, a lot of preachers' wives do. I couldn't even list all the things she does. She's also the janitor now there. Somehow that happened. But my son Owen, he just graduated high school. He actually runs a Bible study on Tuesday nights at our church that he started on his own after coming back from Future Preacher training camp. Him and some guys and some kids just from the school, let's get together and study the Bible. And they have a Tuesday night Bible study. And sometimes it's just a discussion. Sometimes it's a Bible study. Sometimes it's him making a YouTube video of someone doing that one chip challenge. You've ever seen those? Yeah. If you haven't done that, go to a store and buy the chip that comes in the singular cardboard box and try to eat it. It's like eating pepper spray. My daughter Claire, she's awesome. She's 15, went to Guatemala this year, actually teaches a Wednesday night Bible class for the kids. Roman and Xander are typical, 11 to 13-year-old boys now, and they're active and they do all sorts of cool stuff, and they help lead singing in church and stuff. And Gwen and Fiona on our small groups, they're pretty amazing to watch when we worship together, because we'll gather in the living room, and all the kids in our small group will sit on the rug, and they're just belting out praise songs. They love praising God, and it's pretty awesome. But I'm sure your family kind of, you love Jesus, and you love your kids, and you think your family's the greatest too, just like me. What makes our family a little bit unique, though, was mentioned the sport that we choose to do. I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 15 years. I coach kids that become world champions and things like that. My wife trains and has competed. My son Owen is really high level, nationally, worldwide ranked where he's at right now. My 2 boys are killers, especially Roman. That kid in the blue is going to be a world champion. Follow him on Instagram now. I'm just telling you, before he gets famous. My daughters are in it, and they've been in it off and on. They're not as gung-ho, but we're working on that. If you don't know what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, and we do it every day of the week except Sunday, and sometimes we work in it then too. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is like wrestling, not WWE wrestling, but like collegiate wrestling with chokeholds and arm locks. We try to take you down and get you to tap out. Another way to look at it, it's like the UFC without punches or kicks. We're more friendly, and we can still be friends afterwards, and we do it as a sport, not because we don't like you. That kind of thing. Here's a picture of me actually back in Dallas 2 years ago slamming a guy. First time you've ever had a preacher show a picture of him slamming a guy to a mat, huh? In a sermon. Take that, you long-haired hippie. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, a really cool guy. His name's Sean. And Sean, if you ever watch this live stream, sorry about that. But I run into him at different tournaments and things. But anyway, so the jiu-jitsu world and the preaching world puts me in some really cool circles of influence. And sometimes those circles overlap, and I pretty much recruit everybody I know to Jesus or jiu-jitsu, and usually both is what I'm trying to do. And my friend Brandon, who's a preacher down in Delano, California, which, again, he's probably the greatest preacher you've never heard of because he doesn't go to a lot of programs and things like that, never was formally trained. Delano, California, if you're not familiar with it, you probably aren't. It's a small town, middle of California, pretty impoverished community, and it's famous for being the dividing line between the Norteño and Sereno gangs in California. So you got a bunch of farm laborers there, they're working hard, and then a bunch of gangbangers is what the town's like. Well, Brandon works with the church there in that town, and Brandon does a lot of community outreach. He works with the county doing like welfare to work programs. It's an amazing job, like being really hands-on with people in the community and helping them better their lives. And he does a program, and he also does jiu-jitsu, by the way. That's why he makes him cool, too. All of the preachers in California do now. It's what we do. It's like a whole fight club we got going on underground thing. But you don't talk about it. Anyway, so Brandon has this program called Delano Dads that he does, where he gets dads from the community and teaches them how to man up and take care of their kids. I mean, it's good stuff. And he sent me a text message a while back that said this. It said, hey, Cliff, would you be able to teach during Delano Dads on Monday, February 15th? And basically I said, yeah, I should be available. And then here's the lesson description he gave me. He said, the class runs from 6 to 8 with a 10-minute break in between the 2 hours. Will you talk about how jiu-jitsu, I was like, oh, I can talk about jiu-jitsu, has helped you as a man and as a father? I'm like, I don't know. He goes, also, will you talk about how you manage multiple kids and have them respect their parents and love and develop a love for God? I'm like, here's what I replied to him if you couldn't see it. I said, well, I'm still trying to figure all that out. I don't claim to have this figured out at all. And I bet all of you that have kids or have raised kids, have grandkids, or plan on having kids, you're probably the same way. You're like, yeah, we're just trying our best. We're clawing and dragging and scratching our way through this whole thing, trying to at least do our best to make sure that our kids stay faithful to God. And all of us would gladly admit that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. The prayer that I pray with my kids often at bedtime, when I'm, especially with the little ones, we'll hold hands and we'll pray, and I'll use language they understand and stuff. I'll say, and God, thank you for Fiona, and thank you for Gwen, help them to grow to be faithful Christians, and God, please help me to be a good dad to them and forgive me for the times that I'm not. Because I want my kids to know right off the bat, hey, I'm trying, but I'm not perfect, so I'm asking God to forgive me, so when I mess up, I hope you'll forgive me too. And all of us parents in this room will probably gladly amen the fact that there is no such thing as a perfect parent. Nevertheless, even though there is no such thing as a perfect parent besides our Heavenly Father, we should always be working to improve our parenting abilities, our parenting skills, how we interact with our kids, and what we do to raise them. That's what it's all about. It's about personal improvement. And I'm sure you are familiar with the statistics. Statistic-wise and church-wide, I'm sure you've seen article after article about the youth are leaving the church. Nod your head, have you ever seen any article or heard anything about that? Yes, you have, right? I mean, we all see the stats about that. The youth are leaving the church, and it's across Christendom as a whole. People are denouncing, faith in Jesus and the Bible and things like that. And so churches get together, and they have all these discussions, right? Like, what can we do to keep our kids from leaving? Like, when they grow up, what can we do to keep them faithful to God? And we come up with programs, and we mean well. We'll have great youth programs that are involved to make sure maybe if we can get them busy in church work and on mission trips and doing all these things, then they won't leave. And then those are good things, or we're going to teach them apologetics because, if they go off to college and some humanistic professor tells them this, they're not going to know what to do. So we have a class on apologetics. I think you had a lectureship on it like last year maybe, right? I mean, that kind of thing. I'm not picking on it, but I am a little bit. But we do all these different things to try to make sure that our kids don't leave the faith. But the reality is, and I've been working, I'm not a youth minister, but I work with kids. I run Yosemite Bible Camp, our camp there for like over 10 years, and I do our youth rally, and I'm involved in the lives of kids. The kids that are leaving the faith are not leaving because they didn't have a lot of programs at church. They're not leaving because they didn't have a youth minister. They're not leaving because they didn't get to go to Bible camp. They're not leaving even because they weren't taught apologetics a lot of the times, and this is where we get uncomfortable with it, they're leaving because of their parents. They're leaving the faith because mom or dad or both are hypocrites. And at home, they see an inconsistent message in what they're seeing at church. So they can hear all the lessons. And I've seen this over and over and over again. They hear all the lessons from God's Word. They have all the best programs. They're taught everything. And yet at home, they see a mom and dad who don't love each other, who don't treat each other right, or vice versa, that kind of thing. Maybe abuse, maybe neglect, maybe addictions. They see all that. They see hypocrisy where they act one way at church, but at home they see something different. Or maybe parents or mom or dad is using religion almost to weaponize it, to make kids feel guilty and say, you have to listen to me because the Bible says so, that kind of stuff. And you turn them off to Christianity. So when they do have the chance to flee, like they're in college, it's not because some professor's teaching evolution. It's because at home they probably didn't get a consistent message. I know that's not the case all the time. But I'll tell you, the kids that I see leaving the faith are, usually there's baggage back there when you get down to it. It's something going on in the home. So what can we do then to fix it? This lesson is going to be very practical. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of bullet points because that's how my mind works. And I'm just going to give some ideas that I came up with on keeping your kids on fire for God. And I'm going to tell you I cheated a little bit on this. I took some points that I did in that lesson in Delano on jujitsu and parenting. However, you guys won't get all the jiu-jitsu illustrations, so I'm not going to do that, although I might slip a few of them in there, and there are some that only related to dads that I didn't want to bring up. But number one, some ideas that all of us as parents, myself included, can do to keep our families on fire for God. Number one, seek lots of information. Now, by the way, on Keynote, my font looked way better, okay? But anyway, seek lots of information. Bill, I remember when Zinni got pregnant with Owen, we were actually in preaching school at the time, and because everybody has babies when they're in preaching school. And Zinni got pregnant with Owen, and I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to be a dad. I don't want to blow this. And I literally remember our apartment had this little loft area, and I remember laying up there on the floor of that loft and reading a book that I was given in preaching school on parenting. Like, I don't want to blow this. I got to learn some stuff. And I remember I kept on with that. I remember people gave me books. I remember researching things. I'm not saying I haven't made tons of mistakes, but one of the things I valued early on was I need to seek information. Let me encourage you. Read books about parenting. If you can't tell me the last book you've read about parenting, that's a problem. Even if it was 10 years ago, I don't care. We need to be reading. We need to be studying. Look at blogs. Listen to podcasts. Watch videos on YouTube. Go to seminars. Go to classes. This is the most important thing we do. We're raising kids. Try to help them follow God. We need to take it seriously. And truthfully, just going to church every Sunday and Wednesday is not going to be enough. Okay? You need to dig in. You need to work hard. You need to seek lots of information. We do this with everything. I'm not a mechanic, but I'm fairly mechanically inclined and I'm cheap. So I do a lot of repairs on our own vehicles. Thankfully, we're at the first time in our life right now that I have 2 vehicles that are newer than 10 years old. This is like a big deal in the Sabroe house. So I don't even have to maintain them. So, but anyway, my son Owen mowed lawns when he was younger and saved up money and bought himself a Mercedes at 14. Now, before you go, whoa, preacher's kid's got a Mercedes. Someone was living in the Mercedes before we got it, okay? So it was gross, and it was like $1,000 or less that we got this thing for, which even then it was way overpriced, which I don't know how they spilled that much stuff. The whole trunk was filled with loose leaf tobacco, not marijuana, it was tobacco. Who does it in a meat grinder? Seriously, in the back of this Mercedes. So it wasn't the nicest thing. But it was like a C240, and it looked really cool, kind of squatty, that kind of whole look of car. So anyway, he got this Mercedes, and now we had to work on it. It needed a new water pump. It needed a new power steering pump. And Mercedeses, and I'm not a mechanic, have really weird bolts. I had to research, why doesn't any of my sockets fit on these nuts and bolts and things? Well, apparently there's some term for them. It's some kind of weird Torx head or something. I had to buy a set on Amazon. And now I'm looking at this thing. And the water pump on the front, I've done water pumps on like small block Chevys. But this water pump had like 85 bolts going into it. And there's a power steering pump. And the fluid in it was green, okay? What kind of alien car is this? So I had to research. I watched YouTube videos after YouTube videos. I became best friends with the one guy on YouTube that had videos about that. I'm watching him. I figured we knew each other. He's never met me, but he was in my house a lot as I'm studying his videos. Why? Because I took it seriously. I didn't want the car to overheat, right, when I put the water pump on. We study the things that are important to us. If parenting is important to us, we're going to study, and this is biblical. Proverbs chapter 3. And verse 13 says, blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding. Proverbs 4, verse 7, the beginning, I love how profound this is. The beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. Sounds like the advice I would give my kids. And whatever you get insight. You want to be tough? Get tough, right? Okay. You want wisdom? Get wisdom. Common sense, thousands of years old, wisdom. Just go get it. Well, I just don't feel like I'm wise. Well, what are you doing to get wiser? I mean, people say, I'm just not that good with money. Well, what are you doing to get better with money? You know what I mean? I'm just not that good of a husband. What are you doing to be a better husband? Get wisdom. Proverbs 18, verse 13. An intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Number one, you want to ignite the fires in your family. You want to be a better parent. Seek information on how to be a better parent. And number two, one way you can do that is by choosing the people who influence you very wisely. All of us as parents, our parenting has been influenced by different sources. Usually, it's from our own parents. Like it or not, our parenting styles have been influenced by our parents. There's times that I'll do things just like my dad, and I fought so hard to not do some of them. And not even like things like, oh, that's sinful. It always bothered me as a kid how he gripped the steering wheel. He did it very daintily. I didn't think it was very manly. It bothered me. I remember like, why is he gripping like that? And like, I'll catch myself sometime. I'm like, oh, hold on. Like that kind of thing. Or I'll walk by the reflection and I'll get a glance. It looks like my dad all of a sudden, right? Trying really hard. But all of us are influenced in some way by our parents, good or bad. Their parenting styles influenced ours. I'm not saying that you can avoid it, but you can be aware of it. So if you know that at home your dad didn't handle anger very well, and you didn't like the way that he handled anger, you should just be aware of the fact that, you know what, I might have a predisposition toward wanting to respond that way when stressed because that's what I saw, and work to fix it. Choose who is influencing you. What parents are you hanging around? If the only parents you're ever associating with are losers, that might affect your parenting. Who are the people that you look up to? Who are the mentors that you're following? There's been different people, and not always everything about their life do I like, but I've always been like studying how people interact with others, and I've always been intrigued by parents and how they interact with kids. And so I remember one time, there was this man who used to go to Bible camp with us for years, and I was always impressed. He was older than me and had kids that were growing, and I was always impressed how his kids interacted with him. And I'd just watch. I'm like, okay, this is how he does it. Oh, okay, so he has conversations with them this way. He treats the older ones like they're adults. And this is odd, but this is one memory that always stuck with me with him. Up at Bible camp there, where Yosemite Bible Camp, on the top of this hill, there was this old like semi-truck trailer C-train looking thing just dumped on the ground. No wheels underneath it, nothing. Been there for like 50 years. And the caretaker said, man, I sure love to get that thing moved. Well, my friend who's the dad up there, I said, wait a second, he has a winch and he has chains and he loves moving things for fun. So he never met somebody like that, right? He just, hey, if there's a chance to tow something, I'm going to tow something. This guy had a winch underneath his Dodge Ram that he took off of a wrecker with like a Muncie transmission running it off of the PTO, and it was pretty awesome. Anyway, I was like, hey, I think you could try to move this thing. And I remember what he did first, because his son was in high school at the time, and the high school cabin was by this trailer. And he asked his son, do you think I can move that? And his son goes, yeah, I think we could. Now you might think, well, that's okay, what's the big deal? Here you have a 40-something-year-old man talking to a 17-year-old young man about something mechanical and asking for his opinion and valuing it. That's a big deal for young men, okay? That stuck with me. I want to be a dad that values my kids' opinions. And there's a lot of times that I learn stuff from my older kids. Claire teaches me a lot. Owen brings up points, and I'll acknowledge, I'm like, that's a good point, Owen, you're right. I shouldn't do that, or we should be doing this, or that's a good idea for the church. I acknowledge and try to value them because I saw that around me. Who is influencing your parenting? Who are the parents that you're modeling? Don't go, well, that's just the way I was raised. Well, maybe the way you were raised was bad, okay? Don't follow it. There is no excuse. Who's influencing you? Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Proverbs 13:20 says, whoever walks in the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Who are you hanging around? Proverbs 24 through 25 says, make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. Who are the people that are mentoring you with your parenting? Find people to look up to. You don't have to tell them that you're looking. That's kind of weird. Hey, I really admire your parents. Sometimes that seems weird, okay? Watch them from afar, but not creepy-like, okay? But watch. See how people parent. Go, I like the way those kids, one of our elders at church, Kenny is not a loud speaker, but he's somebody that I've always told him, I said, Kenny, I value the fact that your kids and your grandkids, I can tell they love you. I want to be like that when I'm old. I've also seen old guys that no one wants to be around. But everybody's always walking up and hugging Kenny. I'm like, I want to be like that. So I watched that. I modeled that. Okay, I want to be an old guy like Kenny. I don't want to be an old guy like Grumpy Joe over here. You know, that kind of thing. The one that complains about the microphone being too loud or too quiet all the time. You know, that guy. Choose who's influencing Grumpy Joe. If you're watching this video, there is nobody named Joe in the congregation. Where he has a different name. All right. But I heard this quote one time that was powerful to me. It was, a mentor is one that fills the gaps in the life of another with his example. Find people out there in the church, in the world, your family, whoever, that are doing a good job parenting, and let them fill in the gaps with their influence. All right, that's number 2. Number 3, because we got to keep moving because I said I was going to keep moving. Number 3, had to throw in a jiu-jitsu slide real quick. Be disciplined and consistent. Anybody Jocko Willink fans in the audience? No, Jeff, you know Jocko. Okay, Jocko's big slogan is discipline equals what? Come on, you don't know it? Freedom. Discipline equals freedom. If you don't read his stuff, by the way, you're missing out. He has a whole book called like Extreme Ownership on discipline in life. He's a former Navy SEAL, public speaker, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Okay? So anyway, he talks a lot about discipline. But as a parent, we must be disciplined. Quick jiu-jitsu example. That means you don't sit rounds out. When you're tired, when it's been a hard day at work, when you're annoyed with your children, when they've been bugging you, you still have to engage with them. You engage when you're tired, you engage when you're difficult, and in an athletic illustration, you engage when you're sore, you still work. You can't just quit. You can't go, that's it, I'm done, which I do that all the time until I declare it. I'm done with the kids. And Zinni says, I'm done with the kids, your turn. I actually, yesterday, I FaceTimed my wife, and I was looking at her and said, why are you in the garage? She goes, because it's too loud inside. So we're still trying to figure out. We have 6 kids, and they all fight for fun, okay? It's loud in our house. But you have to be disciplined. You have to be consistent. You have to force yourself to engage with your kids. You know, sometimes it's hard and you don't want to pray with them because there'll be times I'm laying in bed and I'm already tired and I had that moment where sleep is about to waft over me and I have a hard time going to sleep. You see how tightly wound I am, okay? And all of a sudden I'm like, I didn't pray with the kids. Jesus could come again tonight. What if the last thing I remember is Dad forgot to pray with me? You know, I come with all this stuff. So I get up and I go around and I tuck the kids in, pray with them, and even the 18-year-old, he's in there playing video games or something. Good night, I want to say a prayer real quick, that kind of thing. Force myself. Force yourself to engage your kids. Force yourself to do Bible study with them. Make a plan, set a goal, and stick to it. And kids thrive in that consistency. You know, our family is always moving. We're a busy family, but we also plan a lot of downtime too. But since we homeschool and I'm a preacher and don't keep traditional hours, I do get to spend a lot of time with the kids. But Wednesdays are hectic for us. Our Wednesday night routine for the last 14 years has been, usually in the morning, kids do school, I do church stuff. We leave about 3 o'clock, we head to the jiu-jitsu gym, train it from 4 to 5. Coach from 5 to 6. Get the kids in the car, drive back home, shower, eat, and get them to Bible class in time for 7 o'clock. And we have to be there first because I'm the preacher. So that's our routine. It's a challenge. We have to be disciplined with it. But since we set a goal that we will always be there on Wednesday night, and you're not going to miss the kids, it's not odd to them. That's what we do. We're disciplined. We're consistent. We're consistent with the rules. We're consistent with the plan. We're consistent with the priorities. You have to be disciplined and consistent and stick to them. You have to do what needs to be done no matter what. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11 reads, For at the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Discipline is a challenge. It's hard to work hard. It's hard to commit to Bible study. It's hard to come to church, but it's worth it. Proverbs 25, verse 28 said, A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. And one more, just because I like the athletic illustrations. I think Paul probably had at the back of his mind the ancient Isthmian games and stuff going on. And he says, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body to keep it under control. Discipline is important in the Christian life. It's important when it comes to parenting. And I'm not talking about discipline like punishing your kids, although you need to do that too. I'm talking about that self-discipline, that discipline to do what needs to be done, especially when it's uncomfortable. Let's talk about something right here. That guy right there, world jiu-jitsu champion, the little guy, Mikey Musumeci, like 5-time light featherweight, world champion, American guy too, which is a big deal. But he got tired of winning his divisions all the time, so he'd enter the open weight against guys like that. I think he actually beat that guy, but the whole match he didn't look very comfortable, okay? Having a guy that size on top of you for a very long time is very uncomfortable. Parenting's like that, okay? It's like you're being squished constantly, okay? And I have 6 kids, they're always climbing on me. But parenting is uncomfortable. You got to get used to it. Let's think about some of the uncomfortable situations that you will come across as a parent. You're on your computer, your phone, you're looking through the internet, and you type in something and it autofills something in a toolbar that's a website that's inappropriate and pornographic. You got to talk to one of your kids and ask them about what they've been looking at online. That's a real conversation you are going to have. It's uncomfortable. Your kids start dating. You got to talk to them about what is a biblical view of relationships and sex and what is appropriate, what is not, and why. That's uncomfortable to have those. Your daughter's talking to a boy that you think is a bad example, but you also know that if you talk about the boy in a bad way, she might like the boy even more. That happens, right? Parenting is uncomfortable. You got to get used to it. And we're people that we avoid discomfort, don't we? We don't like anything that makes our life hard. I mean, I'm always like this. My big goal in life one day is I want to be able to sell everything, live in a travel trailer, and maybe somewhere around Lone Pine, California, be a camp host of a campground you've never heard of. But Hawatha said we have to be around people, so I guess I got to be uncomfortable. But parenting is hard, and you're going to have those uncomfortable situations. This week, Fiona, the littlest one, and she's still kindergarten age, comes to our room, and our kids are always playing house, playing shop, playing ice cream store, it's the girls, it's always something creative and something messy. But anyway, Fiona had this plan. She comes in and she's in our room talking, and she says, me and Gwen, when we get older, Gwen's her sister, we're going to get married and we're going to have a kid. We're like, okay, this is an uncomfortable conversation. How do we start this? First off, how do we explain that no, sisters don't marry sisters, 2, girls don't marry girls, 3, how babies come from to someone who doesn't know where babies come from. And was that a comfortable conversation? No, especially when all the other siblings who know the answers to all those are peeking around the door laughing, like, what are mom and dad going to tell her? That kind of thing, right? I don't even know what we came up with as an answer. We're still trying to figure this out. We went everywhere from why homosexuality is wrong to boys have to marry girls, kind of a hint that you need a mommy and a daddy to have kids, and then somehow brothers and sisters can't get married. Well, why? Well, because sometimes their kids are deformed. It was an uncomfortable situation. I'm not a perfect parent. We were trying to just figure it out, okay? I'm sure she was more confused by the end of the conversation, and the older kids were just laughing at us. But you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable as a parent. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Have you ever had to talk to someone who's in sin? That is an uncomfortable situation. Church leaders have to get used to being uncomfortable. I mean, there's times that as a preacher, or I'm maybe even talking with the elders, we have to deal with a situation, and I can tell that the guys are all trying to do everything they can to not have to deal with the situation because it's uncomfortable. Maybe we'll just make a generic announcement or change a policy and not actually talk to the person, that kind of thing. It's uncomfortable having conflicts, But we have to, and fathers especially, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath. Instead, bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Sometimes that discipline, that instruction, that correction is challenging. It makes you uncomfortable, you're nervous, and you really don't want to do it. And the world is telling you, no, just be comfortable. Someone else will figure it out. The kids will figure it out on their own. You don't want them to figure it out on their own. You need to be the one to teach them. Get comfortable being uncomfortable as a parent. And then number 5, we'll keep moving. Victory as, I put a Boise slide up there because I know I'm in Boise, right? I did that for you guys. I don't really care about sports besides jiu-jitsu. Victory as a parent, because instead of throwing balls, we throw people. I'm just like point that out. Victory as a parent is helping your team or your family win. My job, I call my family Team Sabroe, okay? Which not Sabroe or Sabroe, it's Sabroe. I don't know why that's how we pronounce it, but that's just what we do. But my victory as a parent is to help my family win. You know, as a coach, I coach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I coach kids. I want my students to be better than me. I've had a lot of people over the years go, well, how does it feel to know that your son can tap you out? That was the goal, okay? I want him to be better than me. I'm not a world champion. There's a chance he could be one. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And all the kids that I teach, as they get older, I want them to be better than me. The coach of any other football team, you don't ask some head football coach, are you kind of sad that your star quarterback is better than you? No, you want them to be better than you. A good coach wants their team to succeed. They sacrifice their own success. They help their students to succeed. You know, I don't compete as much and all that because I have to coach. I want them to succeed, and I do the same thing as a parent. My goal as a dad, and all of our goals for moms and dads, is to help our children be successful. That's it. My job isn't to help them be popular. My job isn't to help them, be trendy or know what the latest, coolest thing is or feel happy all the time. My job is to help them be successful, but what I mean by successful is this, and this is what I've told my kids since they were little. This is one thing I think I did get right. Besides that, I'm still figuring it out. I've always told my kids, look, I don't really care what you do in life. They're like, do I have to be a preacher, Dad? No. What kind of job? Do I have to be a doctor? No, and thinking the way we all think and like homework in the Sabroe household, you probably won't be. But I tell my kids, my goal for you is I want you to be a faithful, functioning adult. That's it. Now, maybe there's a better way to articulate that. But what I mean by faithful, functioning adult is I want you, number 1, to be committed to Jesus and just take care of yourself. You know what I mean? Don't try to move back home with me all the time. You know, that kind of thing, right? I want you to be a faithful, functioning adult who can take care of themselves, and that when I die one day, I know that you're going to be okay and that I'll get to see you in eternity. That's what I want. That's my goal, and that's what I think victory is as a parent. And then finally, a couple of verses to prove it so you know I'm not lying. Proverbs 22, verse 6, direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. I know you know that verse. I know there's debates about what it means and all that, but we get the gist. Philippians 2:4, let each of you look not only for his own interest, but also for the interests of others. The reason why kids are leaving the faith is because parents are selfish. And if parents would stop being selfish and start thinking about their kids and thinking about each other, the kids would be okay. But when selfishness is in the home, it results in bad marriages, which results in bad families, which results in kids leaving the church. We have to make sure that helping our team be victorious is the goal. And then finally, number 6, this afternoon, I hope I didn't keep saying morning this whole time, it just dawned on me. But number 6, there is no substitution for time. And again, I'm not an expert on parenting. I don't have a degree in psychology. I think I took one class in it, and I took one biblical counseling course a long, long time ago. But I do know from my own experience, there's no substitution for time with your kids. A child will know if he or she can depend on their mom and dad. Now, let's look at this from the outside in. Have you ever been around a kid that couldn't depend on their parents and how sad that is? My nephew just turned 18 years old. He's been living with my in-laws for the last couple years here because his dad is a homeless drug addict who lives in a trailer kind of in someone's property right now, just at the moment. They never know where he's going to end up. His mom floats around from couch to couch with whatever guy or situation or person will take her in, and she's an alcoholic. My nephew is trying to move forward in life. He just graduated high school early. It's awesome. Now, it was through a continuation school because he was having some struggles. When you don't have mom and dad to help you with homework, yeah, he didn't have mom and dad to depend on him. And the saddest thing I saw was like 2 weeks ago. So my nephew graduated high school early, okay, like 6 months early. That's awesome. One is working on with the school to fill out his FAFSA form because he qualifies for like a bunch of financial aid because he's homeless. And he wants to go to a school to be a fireman. Awesome thing, right? You should be proud of this kid. His dad found out that he graduated early. His dad hit him up and said, no, I need you to sign this paper, and I need you to lie on this paper saying you're still in school so that I can still get these whatever benefits that he was getting. And made his kid feel bad. Well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get food? What do you expect me to do? I'm not going to qualify. My nephew can't depend on his parents. You think that hurts him? I know it does. Now, he's a tough kid, and he acts tough, but that's got to make you ache. It makes me well up thinking about it. A parent, his kid's doing something good, and still even then is being selfish. Not there for the kid, but wants the kid to be there for them. That's the wrong way to do it. My kids need to know that I'm there for them. Later on in life, when I'm old, they can take care of me. But right now, they need me there for them. A child will know if he or she can depend on mom and dad. So my encouragement to you, and I don't know how you're going to do this, but make it happen. Spend the maximum amount of time possible with your kids. Playing with them, teaching them, talking to them, listening to them, praying with them, studying with them. Do things together. Someone asked me a while back, they're like, well, what's kind of your goal in all of this? Because I'm into financial goals and all that kind of stuff like that. And they're like, what's your goal? I said, really, truthfully, I want to have a lifestyle right now that allows me to spend the optimum amount of time with my kids. And if that means putting off certain ideas and goals and things, I'm going to do that because I value this more. And you know what? It's a whole lot of fun, too. You know, we travel a lot as a family, but the jiu-jitsu stuff, it's not uncommon that, all right, Saturday morning, we get up at 4 a.m., get in the car, drive to LA 3.5 hours, compete all day, get in the car and drive home so I can preach that morning. But you know what all that time in the car is? Conversation time with my kids. The fact that you're like, wow, you guys sure train a lot, aren't you tired? You know what we're doing? We're all doing the same hobby together. Me and my wife are sharing the mats at the same time with our kids and then our friends. That time together is invaluable. You can't put a price tag on that. This is the first time I've taken a trip like on a lectureship or something in a long time where I haven't had a kid with me, at least in tow, because I want them to all have that time with dad. The only reason is tickets are expensive to Idaho, especially from Fresno, California, the two like smallest, weirdest airports to get to. But spend the maximum possible time with your kids. There's a book that I read years ago, and I read it again recently. It's a book I recommend, and then we'll close out here. It was a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters by Dr. Meeker. Highly recommend it. And she's written some other volumes too. Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters by Dr. Meeker. And she gives a bunch of stories in there about the influence dads have on their daughters. Because as soon as I found out I was having a girl, Claire's my second oldest, I wanted to be a good dad because I've seen where bad dads have messed up girls. Okay? I didn't want that to happen. And she talks about all these different stories in there. And one of the stories she tells about is this girl who was recounting to the counselor about, man, I could always count on my dad being there. Every night before bed, he'd come in, sit on the foot of my bed, and talk with me about my day. Every single night, I knew that he would be there. And then the counselor later asked, well, tell me about this. Your daughter says you always did that. That's awesome. He goes, truthfully, there were some nights I didn't do that. There were some nights that I went to bed earlier. Some nights I still had to be at work late. There's some nights that she was out with her friends and I didn't get to do it. So it really wasn't every night, maybe 3 out of 5 nights, maybe 2 out of 3 or 5 sometimes. But to the girl, the fact that her dad spent that time with her, in her mind, shaped it over time to my dad was always there. You might not think those little things like, oh, I'm going to my kid's game, or I'm taking them to their practice, or they're sitting by me at church, or I'm involved in their school, or I'm taking them for a walk, or going to the park every once in a while. In their mind, they're going to see it as my mom, my dad were always there. There is no substitution for time with your kids. I know people say, well, quality over quantity. I kind of disagree. I think you find the quality during the quantity. Spend as much time you can with them. Talk to them. Engage with them. Just share life with them. I love having conversations with my kids. I'll ask them, hey, what do you think about this situation? You think that was right? Or you think the preacher did a good job on that sermon? Well, not passion, but what do you think about the sermon? We'll talk about stuff. We'll talk about scenarios. We'll talk about how do you think we should handle it. When they knew what was going on with my nephew and my brother-in-law and him being scammed out of money and all that, I said, man, don't you feel bad for I won't mention his name, you feel bad for your cousin? You're like, yeah, we talked about that. There's no substitution for time. So the question that we proposed at the beginning of the lesson, how do we keep our families on fire for God? I really still don't know. I'm trying my best. I'm still trying to figure it all out, but I'll tell you this. It's going to take work. It's going to take time, but my family's souls and your family's souls depend on it. That's a goal I think that's worth working for. Thank you.